bigger. Yes, so no, I think I think the RSPCA a few years ago put out some figures around 45% of dogs may have kind of show fear or alarm at the sound of fireworks, which it kind of makes sense. And I think the thing is, dogs aren't alone here because fireworks cause a lot of trouble and a lot of stress. My husband used to be a nurse at a dementia home.
Okay, yeah.
And it was always an absolute nightmare if he was on a night shift with fireworks. Wildlife, horses, cats, people with PTSD. It's quite a big list, actually,
Yeah,
Danny.
sure.
So it's not just the doggies.
No, of course, no, definitely not. And I think that, so yeah, what we're going to talk about today, I'm sure can benefit a lot of people, not just pet parents. So before we get going, it'd be great to hear a little bit about you. If any of the audience that are listening today haven't encountered you before, it'd be great to hear a little bit, the intro from you.
Thanks. Yeah, so obviously I'm here kind of with my Pet Remedy hat on. So I'm the behavioural consultant with Pet Remedy. We'll talk a bit about Pet Remedy in a bit. I'm a certified behaviourist here in the UK. I've got a human psychology and therapy background before I started working with animals.
Okay.
So a lot of these things are interconnected, of course.
Yeah.
I think
Definitely. Awesome. That's great. Okay. So at the end of this session, there's going to be about maybe 45 minutes, just under an hour. We're going to have some time for some questions and answers. So as we're going through the session, if anybody has any questions or anything they'd like Andrew to answer, or me indeed, if I've got an insight, then type your question into the chat. I think there's a question space. I'm not 100% sure, but I think there is a button there to put questions in. And then we will get to as many of them as we can. So yeah, Andrew, it'd be great to just kind of hear a little bit more about strategies, I guess, really to kind of for pet parents or anybody else, as we mentioned there, to cope in these situations that are going to arise over the next. And a few people have said that actually they've in the chat that they've heard some fireworks today. So, some early fireworks, or I think somebody mentioned Diwali as well. So, how we can kind of prepare for it, really, I guess.
Yeah, I think you can never prepare too early. So discussions tend to happen about now, but we could be doing having this discussion in kind of February or March, really, to give us a big run up. I think there's a few things to consider. First of all, that it has a genuine physiological and emotional effect on dogs. And like everything, there's a spectrum of things. I think some dogs, like Harley, who's one of our Labradors, he's like, yeah, whatever. Molly is troubled by them. I think that's the best way I can describe it. She's not like having a complete meltdown. And some dogs go right through to actually being really quite severe for them. And actually some dogs might need veterinary input and support because that physiological response is so great. And whilst so it's about getting to know our own dog in those situations and how they are in these situations. There's a few general things before we come on to some of the prep stuff. We kind of have to understand the dog's emotional needs first. So that does mean us parking some of our usual maybe expectations around our dogs. A good example of that, for example, is when that dog hears that kind of unexplained noise. Remember, they don't have it in their diary. They don't think, oh yeah, fine. We'll come on to that in a minute, about how we can add that into the prep. So you have this big bang goes on and it startles them. It might trigger fear in them, a fear response, which is a kind of we can't control that fear response. It's an innate response that happens. They may go and seek somewhere that they find safety in. So, for example, if the dog isn't normally allowed on the sofa, but they jump up on the sofa next to you, that is not the time to be enforcing your rules on not going on the sofa. They might get into the bedroom that they're not allowed to. They might find themselves in the bathroom. I think it's something to really recognise that what they really need from us is support right now. That brings on to another point, which is this notion of not showing affection or care towards a dog who is showing fear because we might somehow reinforce it. That is a fallacy. There is no truth in that whatsoever, and they need our support, and how helpful it is depends on the dog. Some dogs, so Arthur, who's not with us anymore sadly, but the last thing he wanted me was me next to him when he was struggling. He was a collie. He'd take himself off, and he wanted to be left on his own to deal with it. And I think that's another good point. We underestimate how dogs can work through some stuff sometimes, even though they're struggling with it. So we have to keep getting our cue from the dog. That's the most important thing, and seeing what it is that they do. On the preparation side of things, there are things the onus shouldn't always be on the dog. There are things we can do, for sure. I really recommend. I did it myself with Arthur because I say he didn't like fireworks at all. But I'd send cards around all my neighbours.
Okay.
Just reminding them that I have a sensitive dog who struggles with these things, and if they are going to have a firework display in their garden, reluctantly, then just at least let me know so I can prepare for it.
That's a really, really good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a good way of focusing minds a little bit, I think.
Yeah, definitely, because you're almost, giving people that, making people think themselves about what their actions may trigger, I guess.
Yeah, and I think most things are down to a lack of awareness, Danny. It's not because people are being deliberately, difficult about these things. It's just they're unaware. And we've got a friend who's got a young son who's neurodivergent, and if he goes out to an exhibition and sees the fireworks, he quite enjoys them. If they happen while he's at home, he gets very distressed. And actually, since they started communicating that with neighbours, the neighbours don't have their own firework because people want to be neighbourly. So I think it's worth letting people know, at least try to find out what you get, though. I think some people are responsive to that, some people aren't, but there's no harm in doing it. Also, of course, check the local press, see what's coming up that might be there for the bigger stuff. There's some evidence about getting dogs used to the taiko drums.
Okay.
Taiko, I think that's pronounced it. Might not be getting the pronunciation right.
Okay.
Because of the frequency within which they use, and again, we start those off quite low and we just build them up so the dog's used to having them, and it helps with some of that filtering. Some of these white noise devices can be helpful just to take the edge off a little bit. I think using products like Pet Remedy, of course, can be really helpful to kind of help stack the cards a little bit. But one thing to bear in mind, a lot of people see products like Pet Remedy as being a bit of a crisis product. So the dog's in crisis, let's spray some spray around. And whilst it can be helpful in that time, it's actually better to use it ahead of time. It's good. It's a good product to use all the time, actually. But so you build those things up. Think about on the night. We're talking about stuff when we haven't done much else at the moment. We'll go into because there are other things we can do to really help. But as a kind of a in the moment thing. Think about especially that period around when you're going to more likely to have fireworks. Think about changing your routines.
Okay.
And think about doing that anyway, so it doesn't feel weird. Because otherwise, dogs are like, hang on a minute.
I see. Yeah.
When the fireworks start, so just get into the habit as the autumn comes in anyway of changing your kind of evening walk time, changing the time you have dinner. Remember, so they have a chance to eat. Because sometimes they think about creating some rituals anyway that can be indicative of some fun. So it's like, okay, we're gonna draw the curtains, we're gonna stick some music on, we're gonna play some games, and we're just gonna be doing this. So the dogs start to think of that as being something a bit different about that kind of ritual. All these things can be helpful. There's many out there. There's some great advice out there. We've got some stuff on the Pet Remedy page actually, which perhaps we can share in your comments.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we've got some useful tips on this stuff. So
and of course, you guys collab with us on it. You helped us with a blog on our own website as well, which has got some really. I'm sure it's basically exactly the same tips and ideas. But that's really good. And I really like the idea of this kind of changing the ritual, but not doing it as a response. It is a response to what's coming, but it's more about it doesn't then become a trigger of, oh, things are going to be different now, and I triggering another response in a way that you don't want it to. So actually, that's a really good way of going. Okay, let's now start thinking about how we can, before this is going to happen. Changing those walk times, as you said, making making it a little bit more unpredictable, I guess.
Yeah, because one of the things that we try and do with dogs who struggle with certain kind of negative stimuluses is to create positive association with something else. But equally, the opposite can happen, Danny. We can create negative associations. Dogs really, they do a lot of their learning through association. This plus this equals this, and is this good? Is this neutral, or is it bad? And how do I feel about it? And what do things predict? It's about kind of getting things into prediction. One of the big things we have to understand is that there's a principle called sensory integration. And it's how our senses integrate information. That's our external senses, like hearing and vision and that kind of, and also our internal senses as well, like pain and proprioception and other things. And it's how the brain integrates that information. And if it integrates well, and this is connected to something we call sensory mapping, how that system maps that sensory information, then we're less affected by stuff.
Okay.
So if you and I were walking through the woods now, and I said, "Oh, can you hear the birds?" Now that I've pointed them out, you'll hear them.
Yeah.
You weren't aware of them before because you've integrated them, kind of thing. And this is a very important principle when we start thinking about how dogs are responding to the noises, but also how we go about helping them to cope better with them.
Okay.
Which we'll do in a second. So when you think about it, then for a lot of dogs, the first time they hear fireworks is the first time they've heard them.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to map that based on anything else that's already in the information. That's why actually the best preparation we can do is in that first 18 months of a dog's life, really, is introducing them to lots of different things and allowing that sensory integratory system to know, okay, bumps and bangs, I hear them sometimes. The wonderful Nikki French shared a great video on your post the other day about those sound boxes. What a great idea. What a brilliant idea. Nikki's awesome anyway. But what a great idea to kind of get that dog start generalizing certain noises. So that when something happens that isn't quite that, but there's enough information in there which is kind of similar, that's where the brain thinks, okay, well, I can map that into that. The problem is, of course, when just some things just suddenly happen, or sadly, when a lot of dogs, a lot of people seem to get pups in the summer, which is great because like the kids are off school and we got time with the pup. But that means then at some of those really sensitive periods for the dog, that's likely to be when the autumn and winter comes. And the thing is, at that point, dogs who are under kind of 18 months, but especially in that under 12 months, under 6 months even, what we class as neuroplasticity, those kind of fear responses, if you like, can get laid down very quickly and very deeply.
Okay.
That's one little more point on that. I did tell you before we came on, I'm a bit of a waffler, but this is important though, because I want this to be heard by the general public here. We can and should do things to help dogs who struggle, for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
But we must understand that some dogs will never get to that point where they're completely comfortable with it. I think it's just being, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to shift that along a little bit and help them to be a bit more comfortable,
Sure. I think one of the things that I've taken so far is to actually be led by the dog a little bit, to be honest, so actually allow them to feel what they feel but support them as much as you possibly can. And whether that's preparing beforehand through, maybe exposing them to some, I don't know, and I'm sure we come on to this later, sort of maybe playing some, talked about the drums or that type of thing, playing some soundtracks, I guess, in the environment, but actually just being led by your dog and allowing them to feel the way they're feeling, I guess, really.
Well, that's important because we know our own dogs, and I think the most important thing is to understand when those behaviours start, especially those reflexive ones. We shouldn't push back against them. So, for example, we feel that somehow we need to go and lie down, go and settle down, go and lie down, all this kind of trying to somehow, if the dog is physically in situ, then everything's okay.
Yeah.
I've seen some quite poor advice there about having dogs go to their safe place, but that safe place is dictated by the caregiver, not the dog.
Sure.
And just because we see a less behavior doesn't mean necessarily we've got a nervous system at peace. And in fact, the dog has an element of enforced immobilization on top of everything else.
Yeah.
So I think it's really good to keep a bit of a diary on these things to see what it is your dog does do, and especially when they have those big physiological responses. There are medications out there that can be supportive. Vets will be able to help you with that. But I think For me, it's about trying to set things up as best we can, understanding that some dogs may, like say Molly's uncomfortable, she'll find her place and she'll kind of bear with it. Last year was particularly bad
Okay.
because we had we get on for 5 hours of constant stuff,
Whoa.
which was too
Yeah.
it was too much. So by the end of it, all of our nervous systems were frazzled.
Yeah.
By the way, some people go away at that firework, and that's really
Yeah.
cool. If you feel it, well, I've got a friend of mine, she's got loads of collies. Collies are really sensitive because they have very sensitive hearing anyway at the best of times. She bungs them all in the back of the van and goes up to Dartmoor. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there
That's
are things you can do ahead of time.
yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I think that it's really it is just about what you feel comfortable doing is really, and I think that's a really great idea to just drive somewhere in the middle of nowhere and just sit there and wait out if you've got particularly dogs that are particularly sensitive around that time, and it's a really great way of. I mean, not everybody's going to want to do that, but it's definitely something you could do. But obviously, you can't do that every night. That's going to be a difficult. But yeah,
and it is. It used to be 1 or 2 nights. Now it's any time of day. It doesn't even have to be dark, Danny. Now,
yeah, no,
there's a bigger picture here, which is the conversations we still need to be having about whether we should be selling these in the first place.
yeah.
And there are other alternatives now, and I think, but that's a picture, another kind of topic. But we do need more awareness, I think, for the general public about what they're actually doing when they're setting off these in their own garden and things. As I say, it's not just about dogs; it's cats and vulnerable people and wildlife, and it has a big impact.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go and grab my charger. I've just realised.
Oh, okay. No worries. Okay. While you're doing that, what I'm going to do is just let you know about how to ask a question if you've got any questions for Andrew or indeed myself. So if you pop it in the comments, we'll see it, but it probably will scroll far too up the feed for us to get to. So if you look for a question mark icon on your screen, tap that one and you can ask the question, and then I can come back to those at the end of towards the end of the live and ask Andrew some of those questions for sure. I can see there is definitely one in here already, but cool. So
we're very dynamic tonight, isn't it? Because we're just
that's what it's all about, isn't it? Really, I think people like this kind of.
The next time we
real life,
we'll be old pros next time.
Indeed, we'll know what we're doing. We know what we're doing. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Okay. So so I think the key is then in the moment stuff, whatever you feel will bring the most comfort to your dog, and understanding that it might be challenging for them. That's the key, and trialing all these things. It can be very helpful. Draw the curtains, whack up the TV, play games, be silly. Spray pet remedy around, these things will at least give you a chance of maybe taking the edge off. But there are things we can do ahead of time, and that's the key, and that's how we work through things. So on the Pet Remedy website, if you go to fireworks or noise phobias, you'll be able to see some of the general information that we've given now, but also a noise kind of phobia reduction program.
Okay.
You'll be able to see Molly in that, actually.
Sure. Okay.
And my husband, I think you see his legs. So that's
okay.
But it shows you got bit by bit. So it integrates a few different things here. So I talked about sensor integration earlier. Ideally, we want to try and get it so that the brain has integrated more information about these sounds, so that the nervous system is less responsive to it in that sense.
Sure.
And remember, we're looking at taking away layers. Some dogs, we can totally, and I've worked with them, they go through a process and they're like, yeah, do you know what, this is okay. Yeah. One thing to bear in mind is a lot of dogs who struggle with noise also have something extra happening, especially physiologically. So I'm going to just have a little touch on that. So it's very important to make sure that you get your dog vet checked, and especially if your dog starts to develop noise responses that they never used to have, that can be a sign of some pain and discomfort.
Okay.
Because I want you to think about this now. Say if you've got a bit of a dental niggle,
yeah,
and then somebody starts drilling outside your house, you're going to feel that a lot more now than you would have done.
Yes. Yeah, that is true.
Also, if a dog is generally anxious anyway,
yeah.
So if you imagine your nervous system trainers in the room will know this analogy, but the good old bucket. If you imagine the bucket is the nervous system, and the water in the bucket is how much emotional load we're carrying. If that bucket's already kind of fuller than it needs to be anyway, the capacity to deal with more stuff is already compromised. So that dog may have a bigger response to these other things because that nervous system isn't at a place of rest anyway.
Sure.
So these are extra things to consider. Yeah. But what we want to try and do, though, if we're just thinking about it as the kind of the work we want to do, the wonderful Sarah Fisher, who I'm sure some people in the audience will know, she gifted us this wonderful thing called free work. And free work is just where we set out different stations, we have different activities. All this is on the Pet Remedy website as part of this kind of protocol. It's just about setting out some different things, which can include Tug-E-Nuff products as well, and activities and different things going on. What we know about free work, or this kind of notion of getting dogs to engage in maybe licking of this and maybe chewing of this and maybe playing with this and doing all these different things, is it supports better sensory integration.
Okay.
So the way it would work is then you get your dog used to doing this great activity anyway. So, I love this. So keep them out of the room, set it all up, let them in. They're like, great. So they start to get that pattern. If you spray the Pet Remedy spray around, so when they come in, they're taking on the calming actives, and then they're also doing that activity, it's great. When they really get into it, that's the time when we start adding in different noises in the background.
Okay.
So the more traditional approach is just the noises, right? Start low, build it up. But this is already trying to set up that nervous system and that kind of sensory integration system, that sensory mapping system to start doing things. Now, the addition to Pet Remedies has a couple of angles here, because not only do we have the calming aspect of it anyway, we also have the ability to start mapping certain things. So visual and auditory mapping is fixed at quite a young age, but olfactory mapping is never fixed, Tammy.
Okay.
So this is why, my husband's a nurse and he works at a hospice actually. But when we've just come away, we've just been away on holiday, we've just come back. So he's gone back to work and he can now smell the inpatient's unit again. The kind of the cleaning materials and all that kind of stuff.
I see. Yeah.
Another week he won't smell it consciously because it's integrated again.
Sure.
So actually we can utilize that olfactory process of the Pet Remedy with the other things that are going on, even with the auditory stuff to help.
Okay.
So all these things can be really helpful. And then you gradually start building up the volume. You want to try and use different types of devices.
Okay.
To try and add different forms of kind of resonance. You can never replicate the real thing, of course.
So when you say different types of devices, what do you mean, like different types of sounds, or are you talking about actual different speakers, I guess, or different?
Both.
Okay.
Both, yeah, because if we're just, I've got there's kind of little sound cubes. They can be quite good because you put a bass on those, sometimes through the telly, sometimes through your stereo.
Okay,
I see. Different angles, so that it's not, so the sound itself is coming from different places and also on different levels.
Sure.
And to start doing it with different noises. So this is why you need a good run-off, really. So you want to start building it up, and you want to kind of see, if the dog, you'll see in one of the videos that Molly kind of lifts her head up, but then goes back to the free work. That's absolutely fine, because she's like, oh, that one was a bit, actually, no, I'll go back to my free work.
Fine.
If she'd stopped completely, if she'd moved away from the activities, if she couldn't get back into that, that's a sign that actually that nervous system's taken over a bit again. That's where you'd stop. We always go back down a bit, but the most important thing there is you don't go back to using the sound straight away. You have a few more times without it, and then start adding them in. And you want to use many different sounds of different things. And actually, if the dog struggles with, say, fireworks, don't always think about it being fireworks, because fireworks have a noise to them, but they're still noises on a certain range. So if you're using, you might have a week of doing something that isn't quite fireworks, but it might be things like road drills.
Okay. Yeah.
Or whatever, really doesn't matter. But and then if you do get into the fireworks, you don't just use one. You use one, and then you might have 9 or 10 different firework type sounds. The more you keep doing it, you want to get to the point that it doesn't matter what volume you're on or what's happening, the dog seems to integrate it well.
Sure.
Then you have a better chance. The other good thing now is you've created an activity that you can also use when fireworks are on.
Yeah.
Because
that's true.
If you think about it, the dog's like, well, that was a big one. That was a big one. But I've kind of integrated some of that information already.
That's a really good idea, actually, to do those things even in that, not use the actual real life sounds,
Yep.
use those sounds that have been synthesized to on that time. So that's a really great. Because a lot of people wouldn't think about that. They just kind of think, oh, I've done the work now. It's fireworks night. Everything's going to be fine. But actually, it's not. Yeah.
Well, if you bring all these layers in together, so if you've done some of the work and you've built these things in and you've got the activity now, and then you start adding in the changes in routine and rituals, then you start to set yourself up more for it to be more of a predictable kind of setup for the dog. Really, predictability is everything.
Yeah.
And there are other things you can try. Remember, the dog will tell you. The dog will tell you. My friends who do T-Touch, which is well worth looking up, T-Touch, but and there's free resources on T-Touch wraps.
Okay.
The
Maybe just for people who don't know what T-Touch is, maybe just a really quick.
Well, I don't think it matters too much what T-Touch is in this point,
No.
but the main point is, although he's looking into it's good to look into T-Touch more generally. But one of the things is a wrap, so it's just a piece of material that's wrapped around the dog in a certain way, and it's that element of compression that is believed may help that nervous system. This is where thunder shirts, the principle of thunder shirts, has come from, which is kind of like a little coat that a dog wears, but it's quite tight fitting. Sure. I had a client who got their dog like a snood. Is it called snoods or something that goes over your
over your head? Yeah.
And it really helped. It helped the dog because it muffled things out. Again, white noise generators can help as well if the dog gets used to them and they're played at a certain frequency, because that means that the noise perception isn't quite as accurate. Imagine if there's nothing at all and then just a bang, then the brain's really going to focus in on that bang. But if you've got the sound of whales, tropical things, I don't know, whatever it is that you do for your white noise, then actually it's less distinguishable through. So yeah, all these things can help. We've got to recognize that fireworks are pretty crap, Danny. I'm just going to say it. I know we all have great memories of when we're young, but the fallout is huge. We are talking now not about fixes or kind of panaceas. We're talking about damage limitation here.
Okay.
For some of these dogs, if you've got a dog who snores, who sleeps the way through it, great. But many dogs don't. They'll struggle on, say, different degrees. Those ones that are more severe, some dogs will turn to self-mutilation, Danny.
Okay. So
they will live themselves raw. Those dogs definitely need veterinary support.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess really again, it's being led by the dog again, isn't it? Really, if it's really, you need to kind of look at what's happening and adapt and take advice if you need to, and adapt what you're doing based on what's happening. For sure, it's a really it's quite serious. I mean, and this topic kind of, you're right, it does the rounds this time of year, but actually, it's probably something that we should have been talking about a lot sooner than now. But I guess if people are trying to think of some things that they can do in the real short term, because it isn't that long, what would you kind of say is the, and it's a really difficult one for you to answer, I'm sure, but the things that people can do right now, we've kind of talked about it, but the things that people can start right now to help them get through that time.
Depending on the level of severity of the dog's response, if that's coming, definitely plan ahead, start now. There's limited scope for a good noise phobia reduction program this close up, because ideally you want to get the dog used to certain things before the big stuff starts to kick in. But definitely think about calming support with something like Pet Remedy. Whatever you find helps. I'm going to talk about Pet Remedy, I know, but if you think something else helps, then why not? And actually, even the stuff that doesn't necessarily help the dog, Danny, if it has a placebo effect for the caregiver, that can still be a positive thing. Think about, actually, do you know what? When they go, my dog would normally go behind the sofa. Well, don't try and get them out from behind the sofa. Plan ahead. Make the sofa a cool place. Get a duvet in there. Get a drink. Get some water in there so they can have a drink when they're ready. And also, try not to keep coaxing dogs out. Give it a bit of time. So you'll start to see. So if Rover's gone behind the sofa and they're safe and it's hard for them, give it maybe, after the last bang, give it maybe 10 minutes. Okay, Rover, you ready? Come on, we're ready. And if the rover doesn't come, wait another 10 minutes, then ask again, because then the dog isn't coerced to come out when they're not ready.
Sure.
I think the key, the most important thing for the general public on most topics, actually, Danny, is it's really noisy out there. Everybody's got an opinion when it comes to dogs. A lot of the information is very contradictory. We know enough now about the individual dog's lived experience to know that actually the dog is the expert, not us. And actually, we've got to support these kind of conversations are great for the public, because it makes them, oh God, I can actually share affection with my dog. I can let the dog on the sofa with me. It doesn't matter if the dog sleeps with me tonight. These things are important, and some people almost need permission for those things.
Yeah, and I think that again, that's a really it's about as I said, this is the biggest takeaway that I've taken from this conversation, is that it's just let your dog tell you what they not tell you what they want, but allow them to be what they're being, if that makes sense. So if they're finding it difficult, let them find that space and just let them be, as it were, but be there to give them that comfort and support if they're asking for it. I think that's really key, and there's some really great strategies there that you've brought up that people can try, and some resources that we will definitely link to for sure. Have you got some time for a couple of questions, if that's all right? I've got a few here that people have the people that have I'm just going to read them quickly to myself before I read them, just in case.
Sorry if I'm making a bit seasick with my wobbly. I'm having to hold my phone in my hand, right. So it's a bit wobbly.
It's all good. Again, it's learning, isn't it? We've learned now. We know that we need something to prop our phone up on. We need to, make sure we get a charger. So we've got anxious Cocker Spaniel owners, or owner, I guess. She is jumpy with any bang noises, but how do we cope when fireworks are set off at random when we have no chance to prepare?
Well, I think this is like I say, this is about trying to do damage limitation with these horrendous things in the first place, really. I think if your dog is already jumpy around noises anyway, that's telling us something more potentially, which is not about, it depends on what kind of noises, but if the dog's quite jumpy, like if somebody bangs a car door, the dog's jumpy, always think about physiological, but also think about emotional. A lot of spaniels, especially like the working cockers, that nervous system's pretty strong anyway. So these are extra things that we can consider, I think. Try and think about the patterns that the dogs like to go through when these things do happen, kind of a bit out of the blue. But a lot of the advice we've given tonight about changing your routine, getting things, try and stack your cards in your favor a little bit. And definitely after that gap between now and New Year, you can totally start working on some noise prevention stuff.
We haven't even talked about New Year, whether fireworks start again, but
fireworks are a little bit more predictable in New Year, I tend to find. It's New Year's Eve, that's it, really.
Awesome. Okay, so I've got a couple more questions. So I'm just going to read it quickly. So we've got a 5-year-old Labradoodle male, always nervous, but this year fireworks started last night. He froze and started uncontrollably trembling. I was not sure how to support him. Sat on the floor with him over 30 minutes, shaking. Very upsetting to see. Any tips, please?
Well, I think getting down with the dog is, I think you do the right things by being with them. If you hold the dog for a bit, and the kind of shaking starts to reduce a little bit, that's what they need. Sometimes if it doesn't, if you're just next to them, they don't necessarily want the touch. Depends on what they're trying to tell you. I think this is definitely a case of when you have that gap, starting to plan ahead a little bit about how you can reduce some of that overall anxiety. Definitely speak to the vets if you need to get some support. There's I don't want to mention medications directly because that's not my job, but the vets will tell you there is a couple of things out there that seem to have good evidence behind them. One is just like a gel that you just rub onto the dog's gum just as the things start happening, and it works very quickly, actually. And it's not sedatory in that kind of sense,
Okay. But again, it's probably seeking some, if again, being led by the dog, if it's a really severe reaction, then definitely getting some, my thing's starting to drop that, getting some professional advice, or knowing when you need to get that professional advice, really.
And get those takeover drums on, because I think, the more I read the kind of research on takeover drums, the more compelling it is, really. Again, it's nice to get the dogs used to it beforehand, so start playing it now. Why not? And get Pet Remedy, of course, if you haven't already. I think that's definitely a thing to do in those situations.
Cool. Excellent. Okay, so we've got one more question. I'm gonna read the question out, but I'm not. If you don't want to answer it, it's totally fine. But my dog man trails. I was told to trail in fireworks, as will help with the positive association. Do you agree, or should I avoid that time of year?
Say that again. Just.
So my dog man trails. So man trailing.
Oh
yeah. And they've been given the advice to basically do it in the fireworks season, but they want to know whether that's a good idea or a bad idea in your opinion.
Well, they're all just ideas, and until the dog tells us.
Yeah.
So one thing to bear in mind, when the blood's in that more thinking part of the brain, the emotional part of the brain doesn't get quite so much juice. Okay. This is why we encourage people to think about stuff when they're having a panic attack or whatever else, or to, look at me, keep breathing, whatever it is, So there can be, I can see there being some merit in the dog doing something they've already well rehearsed, and they're in that kind of working mode, but it doesn't mean that subconsciously they're still not being affected by stuff, and it's what comes afterwards that's the thing to consider, because we see this even with so in my early psychology career, I worked a fair bit with the military, and they're kind of trained to kind of do the task even though stuff's going on, but it can be many months or years later when they're affected by it. So question mark, just see. It depends on the level again of the dogs. I think I don't know how you do man training necessarily at home. I suppose you could have somebody hiding around the house and go to it, but to do it out and about, maybe that might be a bit much. But sometimes you just find out by doing it.
Yeah.
Because the dog will tell you. The dog will say, "Actually, while I'm doing this activity, I can cope better."
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So that's the last question we've got there. But thank you so much, Andrew. It's been I've learned a lot, which is good. I've got two dogs, one who has never really exhibited any problems around fireworks or any kind of loud noises. I mean, a lot of other things he exhibits issues with around other dogs and stuff. But then the dog that we got in rescue dog in lockdown, Bob, who is the inspiration behind Bob, our toy. He's not quite the same. He does definitely struggle and then it's not just fireworks; it's any kind of loud noises, really. So, but I do exactly the same as what you've recommended. I just let him be him and give him the support that he needs through that time. But what we will do, we will link to the resources that you've mentioned today. Definitely, as you mentioned, that they've just released a couple of videos that Nikki French has recorded for us around. There's one on noise boxes. So again, that's that desensitization thing that you do, and there's one more, but I've forgotten what that is. Definitely, and we also got our blog that you helped us write around coping with fireworks, and also we've not really talked about it too much, but the same type of thing, I guess, around the doorbell and the doorbell ringing more often on Halloween, which is going to be, you need to desensitize to that, so thank you so much for joining us and for imparting all your advice and help. Any last words before we go?
No, thanks for having me, Danny. I'm really looking forward to kind of doing more stuff together over time, I'm sure. So thank you for having me tonight and bearing with me while I sorted everything out.
No, it's all good. It's all good. It's a learning curve for everybody here. I'd never done this before, but yeah, definitely perfect. Thank you so much, and we'll speak soon. And don't forget, pop down to see us in the warehouse down in Devon.
Oh God, yeah, I'll be there in the next couple of weeks. I'll be.
Well, you're in Devon anyway, aren't you? So
yeah, of course. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for joining us, and yeah, watch out for all the resources that we will post over the next day or so. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.